My name is Abinder Singh. I was about to post a lengthy blog regarding Adolf Hitler, and the topic of the blog was: there are those who call Adolf Hitler a monster, and then there are those like me who blame what made Adolf Hitler a monster. Was Adolf Hitler a monster? Not always, but he became a monster. But there are some evil forces in this world that do not want to discuss what made someone like Adolf Hitler a monster, and the monster he became, gaining millions upon millions of support throughout National Socialist Europe. Now, what made Adolf Hitler a monster was in 1932. The Stalinist communist Bolsheviks in Russia made a purge into Ukraine, into the Balkan states. They looted the agriculture, and tragically 10 to 20 million Ukrainians starved from avoidable hunger, starved from famine, starved from starvation. This happened in 1932. So when 1 year after, in 1933, Adolf Hitler is rising to power in Germany and he expels the Jews from Germany, don't you see there's a link between the Ukrainian famine and Adolf Hitler becoming a monster? Now, why is there a link? Why would the Ukrainian Holodomor famine turn someone like Adolf Hitler into a monster? Because it was avoidable. So we have to go back to World War I. In World War I, General Hindenburg and General Erich Ludendorff were doing very well in organizing the German army to repel the Tsarist incursions and purges into the Eastern European, Baltic and Balkan states. They practically won the war on the Eastern Front because Lenin from Russia signed a treaty to withdraw Russia from the war. Russia will resign from the war. But suddenly, on the home front, German population, civilians, no longer supported the German army on the home front and started losing support for the war. And you have to ask yourself why. But eventually, Germany did not lose on the battlefield against the enemy. They lost on the home front and had to fall and were forced to surrender. Who made Germany surrender on the home front? Zionist America and Zionist Britain. Now, one of the reasons what Germany had to do or cede as a result of surrendering in World War I, they had to cede territory gained. Territory they had gained successfully from pushing back the Tsarists in Russia, they had to return. And so they had to withdraw their armed forces from the Eastern Front. Now, if they were not made to surrender on the home front during World War I, and if they were not made to cede territory in Eastern Europe, well, the Ukraine would have still been protected by the German army, who would have repelled any Russian Tsarist or communist Stalinist purge into the Ukraine. But the Ukraine was left open and vulnerable because Germany were forced to cede territory in World War I. So you have to ask yourself, why? Why would the population in Germany no longer support Germany's war effort on the home front when Germany has forced Russia to surrender and withdraw from the war on the Eastern Front? It clearly has to do with money. Now, where are the Zionists from Britain and America getting the money to bargain with the Zionist sympathizers or council members in Germany to cause the population to no longer support Germany's effort on the home front? I will tell you. It is through the scramble for Africa and India, where India and Africa, First Nations Canada and Aboriginal Australia, as well as the South American indigenous markets in the Americas, markets were being looted and plundered by the Zionist Rothschild bankers, capitalists, and they used this financing to cause those in Germany who wanted to be brought in, as they call it in the streets, bring-ins, to lose support for the effort, for Germany's war effort on the home front. And it's basically got to do, they sold out. Now, do I agree? I am angry, because this had a butterfly effect in regards to what happened in Asia, because the Bolshevik Russians then backed the Communist Party of China, who seized power in Beijing from the Kuomintang National Republican Army of China. The Republic of China was then, it just had such a terrible effect in China. The 1968 Great Leap Forward, or the 1958 Great Leap Forward, where famine occurred in China because the communists just made a mess of everything, and 80 million people perished away from hunger in China. And this was all avoidable if General Hindenburg and General Erich Ludendorff in World War I for Germany were left alone to continue with their operations. So Zionist Britain and Zionist America caused on the home front in Germany to lose support for Germany's war effort on the home front, where they were forced to cede territory. The territory that they were protecting was now open and vulnerable, and the Stalinist communists made a purge into the Ukraine, stole the agriculture, which resulted in 10 to 20 million people perishing away from hunger. So this is where the pressure has built up, and this is what made not just Adolf Hitler a monster, made a majority of the National Socialists throughout Europe, whether in France, Netherlands or Eastern Europe, into very, very violent human beings, because they blamed the whole Jewish identity for what could have been avoided. But do I blame Judaism? You have to remember, in World War I, 100,000 German Jewish soldiers fought for Germany on Germany's side to repel the Tsarist purges into the Eastern European Baltic states. So that means 100,000 German Jewish soldiers, House of Solomon, Jewish Socialist Association, must not be harmed or come into harm's way, because they are not to blame. But those who are to blame are not only to blame for the Holodomor famine, but also to blame turning Europeans into monsters, raging monsters, where they lashed out at people who they otherwise would not have lashed out at. They lashed out at them because of the Holodomor famine, which was avoidable. This resulted in monsters such as Adolf Hitler rounding up the whole Jewish population and sending them to concentration camps, where some very, very tragic and horrible things happened to people. But who's to blame for turning him into monster? Zionist Britain and Zionist America are ultimately to blame for the Jewish Holocaust, as well as the Holodomor famine, as well as the famine in China, the Mao Zedong Great Leap Forward, the Bengal famine. It is Zionist fault. So as far as I'm concerned, Azad, Hind, Fauj are in a desperate situation during the 1930s and 1940s due to the resources of India being plundered and looted, and that desperate situation means that Subhash Chandra Bose Netaji, the general, went to the Third Reich for assistance to liberate India from Zionist colonial occupation. So don't you dare ever blame an Azad, Hind, Fauj, Fourth Reich multicultural sympathizer for the Holocaust that happened in Poland or in Ukraine, because that is the Zionist fault. They should be ashamed of themselves. It's Govinda Singh, 1984, Gov Love 84 Aria, OSNST, peace.